Yo, what is up, you guys? My name is Version1, and welcome back to the last episode of Reaction Time Installment 48. This week is flown right by. I believe it's Monday, so technically a new week is starting since I started these episodes, started these late. But that's without further ado. Anyway, we're going to something. I just recently, literally today, as of recording this video, found this guy on TikTok. It goes by PARASYKE TV. And if you enjoy these paranormal, supernatural, mysterious stories, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. He does exactly what he says, paranormal type of stuff and cool stuff. I saw this deal. It's called Researchers Unleashed Primordial Horror in Antarctica. It looked interesting. I was watching the TikTok, and he said he had a YouTube channel, so I had to go find it, so that way I could get a full video. So I'm going to jump to Reaction Cam, and we're going to check this out. So without further ado, here we go.
In February of 2021, a young man made some wild claims about an unknown horrific apex predator in Antarctica. In a bizarre but highly detailed, now deleted thread looking for creepy Google Earth pictures on the paranormal board of 4chan, an Anon posted this. A zoomed-in Google Earth image seeming to show a massive 3 to 4-legged spider-like cryptid. But before the thread could continue on to another submission, it would take a wild course change when a user who we'll call Aaron commented, "I am the foremost expert on this subject. My father was stationed in Antarctica at McMurdo Base. He's told me things." And he goes on to give us some background information on his dad, informing us that his dad was one of the only medical doctors on the station for 11 months in the 90s, and he avoids the specifics in order to maintain some level of anonymity. He even posted these pictures of a clock and plaque given to commemorate his dad's time at McMurdo Base. Aaron first details that during his father's time at the station, he would frequently accompany the rest of the crew on expeditions. And from the first time he went out, he noticed that the expedition would take these long, circuitous routes to avoid certain areas that, according to him, were not environmentally hazardous. But one time as their truck was cresting a ridge, he noticed far off in the distance what appeared to be a massive gray building dead center in one of these no-go zones. When the doctor finally got comfortable enough with one of the lead researchers who had been working at the base on and off for over 10 years, he finally asked him, "Why do we take such long routes to avoid those areas if they're not hazardous?" But the researcher's demeanor just completely changed, and he went pale and he just told the doctor, "Shut up." Aaron then specifically details where one of these no-go zones was, about 30 miles south and 10 miles east of McMurdo Base. Another Anon did some Google Earth snooping and found that at those coordinates, if you turn the camera around, there was this huge gray monolith with the base of it completely blurred out. And the monolith is a complete mystery. We don't know why it was built, who built it, or when, and that area of Google Maps has been scrubbed. Aaron then goes on to describe when his dad, the doctor, started to realize that it seemed like everything that was happening at the research base, everything they were working on, seemed to be in support of a different project, a completely hidden agenda. One day, a man was dragged into the infirmary screaming, and the doctor didn't recognize him as he wasn't one of the soldiers or researchers from the base. The man was in critical condition, and the soldiers that dragged him in said that he had fallen. The doctor immediately noticed that these cuts all over the man's body were way too deep and clean to have happened from falling on some rocks. And as the doctor began working on him, the man started deliriously screaming. He said, "We let them loose, and we thought they were dead because they were frozen." He tried to continue, but the guards ripped off his oxygen mask and gagged him, ordering him to stop speaking. The doctor, who was both trying to save this guy's life and entranced by what he was saying, immediately flipped out and started screaming at the soldiers. But one of the soldiers just leveled his rifle at the doctor and said, "Fix him." And then once he had stabilized him, they forced him back into his quarters. The commanding officer for the entire base then visited his quarters and reprimanded him, telling him he was too smart for his own good and that they didn't need that because the last doctor that they had was too smart for his own good, and what they needed was a doctor who would follow orders, before threatening him that if he didn't fall in line, he would be dishonorably discharged.
That's fucked up. But I would not put it past
the base lost contact with someone who had left against orders during the winter months to take some samples. When they were able to recover the man's body, they had to wait for it to thaw out so they could sew it back together because he was in half. The commanding officer instructed the doctor to list the cause of death as hypothermia, as they couldn't prove whether the halving happened pre or post-mortem. After a number of different incidents and experiences like this, Aaron's father would finally have his first run-in with these creatures. The doctor and that same 10-year veteran researcher who had tried to shut him up were on a research expedition together, and they got caught out in the open as a storm front began to move in. So they quickly grabbed their gear, hopped back in the truck, and started heading back to the base in this extremely low visibility atmosphere. As they were driving, they hit something that felt very much like a human. It was this kind of heavy impact, and it felt organic. And even though there shouldn't have been anyone out in the snow at this time, it really felt like they hit someone, so they both get out of the truck. As Aaron's dad hops out of the passenger seat and starts to make his way around to the driver's side where it felt like the impact was, the researcher almost immediately began yelling, "No, never mind, get back in the truck, it's nothing, just get back in the truck." And the researcher was also making his way around the truck the opposite way as he was yelling and waving his hands, trying to just obscure the doctor's vision. But he could clearly see these 6 or 7 foot long, white, skinny, spindly legs sticking out from the other side of the truck. After treating these strange injuries and seeing these fatalities, and now seeing some kind of bizarre creature he couldn't explain, he became obsessed with figuring out what was going on. And at first, he tried to do it the right way. He began trying to ingratiate himself to the researchers, he tried to make friends with some of the soldiers, but he got nowhere. So he basically just decided to start breaking into their offices. And normally I'm against burglary, but at this point I'm all for it. The dude is an absolute mad lad. He broke into the head researcher's office, and while digging through his filing cabinets, he found a series of journals, finally detailing what they had been struggling to deal with at the base for some time. According to the researcher's journals, he believed they had accidentally released a prehistoric primordial apex predator. The theory was that these creatures were released via thawed boar samples. The creatures started their life cycle very small, but quickly grew exponentially bigger and bigger. They had 4 very long, very powerful, spindly legs. And according to diagrams in the journals, they could grow to be 30 to 40 foot tall. The researchers used the term striders as they resembled huge spiders, but were not clearly related to any arachnids. As that initial victim that the doctor had worked on said, they believed they were dead because they were frozen in ice that was at least tens of thousands of years old. But apparently they were just in some kind of deep stasis. As they began to thaw, they woke up and brutally attacked the researchers on site. The creatures were bone white and moved either at night or during severe winter storms. And the journal detailed one such night when there was a severe winter storm battering the research base. But some of the researchers began to notice that there was thudding and tapping on the walls and windows of the base that wasn't from the storm. And paperclip next to this entry was an old Polaroid showing one of these adolescent creatures crawling across the window. Aaron's father then went back to his quarters and booted up his Apple II SI computer. He then took extensive notes on everything he had experienced and discovered in the journals, and then decided he'd break into the commanding officer's quarters. This time, he didn't find diagrams and notes describing horrific eldritch creatures. He found something even more fascinating: expense reports. The doctor found records of an operation taking place during the winter months, for which this officer had put in requisition orders for thousands of rounds of additional ammunition. Something that was extremely out of place, especially for a research base that was basically out of commission during the winter months. They couldn't do anything but wait for better weather. The document also listed some of the soldiers who had led the operation. One of them, who Aaron refers to under the pseudonym Jones. Jones was a Green Beret, but he was suffering greatly as he was totally shaken up and disturbed by some of the things he had witnessed during his time at the base. He desperately needed someone to talk to, as talking about any of the anomalous activity was completely taboo amongst the rest of the crew. But the doctor had a reputation for being way too interested in all the secrets of the base. So although it may have been slightly unethical, the doctor agreed to provide therapy to Jones, knowing that he would be able to obtain more information about these creatures. But he was absolutely unprepared for the rabbit hole that Jones was about to send him down. Jones proceeded to tell Aaron's father about the operation, the same one that he had discovered the expense reports for. According to Jones, those no-go zones that they were ordered to stay away from were owned, operated, and protected by an extremely powerful shadow organization, whose authority superseded every other government agency on the continent. And one night, the order came down for McMurdo Base to immediately provide military support to one of these shadow complexes. So Jones' team and a few others were heavily armed and mobilized. They made a beeline for an area that they had always been ordered to avoid and arrived at what appeared to be a heavily fortified office building. As they made entry, they quickly realized there were probably no survivors, as the interior of the building was absolute carnage. The soldiers began making their way around the bodies checking for survivors when one of them shrieked out in pain before being quickly dispatched by one of these creatures. A tangled mess of legs about the size of a large dog. And the creature was able to injure multiple other soldiers before they were able to neutralize it. As the injured and the unfortunate one KIA were dragged back out to the trucks, Jones and his team were ordered to secure the sub-basement. And even though he had just been attacked by a giant spider, what he saw in the sub-basement was what blew his mind, and what was messing with his head all this time later. The basement was basically just an entry point into the actual facility. A massive lab complex extending multiple stories into the ground. And the entire lab was fitted with technology that seemed to be way more advanced than anything he had ever seen. Including what Jones described as a bullet train terminal, but what a bunch of the Anons on the original thread claimed was most likely mag rail technology. Jones detailed how there were all these inhuman experiments in these big test tubes all over the place, including massive Strider cages that were busted open and now empty. And he didn't provide any further details about taking down more of the creatures, so did they just get away? Is it possible they escaped to other parts of the world through these deep underground mag rail tunnels? Aaron's father was obviously extremely skeptical of Jones' story, especially since now it expanded far beyond this prehistoric apex predator. Now questioning the public's knowledge of technology and the technology that was all around him, and this weird relationship between the world's governments and this unseen authority. But he tried to mask his disbelief from Jones, as he could at least tell that Jones believed what he was saying. A few weeks later, the doctor's time in Antarctica had finally come to an end, and he was finally shipping out. The night before he was leaving, at 2 a.m., he was woken up by Jones' hand over his mouth, and the other hand shushing him, his eyes wide open and kind of had this crazed look. As the doctor began to calm down, Jones reached behind his back to retrieve something, and when he did, he pressed it firmly up against the doctor's chest before slowly backing out of the room. And the doctor sprang up, grabbing whatever this was off his chest before quickly dropping it on the ground in disgust. What Jones had placed on his chest was a 2-foot-long portion of one of those spindly white legs from the creature in the office building.
Damn.
As Aaron continues giving little details about some of his father's other experiences while he was at the base, the conversation shifts again as he lets everyone know he has found this Apple IISi computer, as his dad never gets rid of anything. And his dad even told him that he was sure there were more notes of more experiences that had happened on that computer, but he just couldn't remember because it had been so long. He additionally posted pictures of the 2 original hard drives that were used in the computer, and he even opened them up to show the dates on them. His last post on the subject was about going to seek professional help to recover whatever data was on these hard drives. But a lot of the Anons in the thread sternly warned him against taking this action, as if there was any incriminating information on these hard drives, he'd be in a lot of trouble. Aaron accepted that there was some level of threat to seeking professional help with these hard drives, but he assured them he'd be really careful. But that was his last post on the thread. He never brought it up again, and he never returned.
Warning. Unauthorized communications detected.
That's creepy. It really goes to make you think, really. Don't panic, thank you. It really goes to, yeah, because yeah, PARASYKE research. Thank you for viewing this Theta level restricted briefing in its entirety. Any and all contact with the descripted entities will require immediate immolation of the contactee. Travel to outbreak area strictly prohibited. Which I agree. I'm not going to go to Antarctica anytime soon, and even if I would, there's no way in hell I'd be sticking my head out the damn door in a freaking winter storm in Antarctica. That's just craziness. And especially going out and traveling and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know. It's pretty interesting. I don't know if any of this is actually legit because it did all come from 4chan. So, I mean, it could just be a complete story, fabricated and stuff like that. But, of course, there were the pictures that probably don't exist now on Google Earth that showed the monolith and, the blurry image of the striders or whatever the hell they're called. But I just find that fascinating. I find any kind of paranormal, cryptic kind of stuff really interesting because there's so much we don't know about our own planet, which is just fucking weird. We know more about space than we do about our own oceans. And on top of that, a lot of the damage we're doing to this planet ourselves, and which is causing a lot of stuff like this to happen. Like, I think I saw on my Google feed, they found a prehistoric crab or a prehistoric snail or something like that they thought has been dead for 2.5 million years, but they found it in a cave somewhere. I don't remember where. I didn't read the whole article, but I just find that fascinating because it's like, there's something screwy happening. I don't know if it's a multiversal thing. I don't know if we're in an incursion. I don't know if it's a Matrix glitch type of thing where the Matrix or our simulation is just breaking. I have no idea what's going on because there's so many damn fucking theories out there, and I don't know which one was correct. I mean, hell, you never know. We might not even be in our own prime dimension anymore because of the quantum immortality theory or anything like that. Because, I mean, I do agree with the quantum immortality theory because we're in a big rock floating in space and we're not just driving around and dodging asteroids. I mean, how many times have we been hit and just transferred our consciousness to another form of ourselves? It could drive you nuts thinking about it, but I find it fucking fascinating. All the damn Mandela effects that are happening, all the damn little thing that are happening, a lot of things that seem to be a little bit different than they normally are. I don't know. It's just really trippy and really weird, and it's really fascinating. But that's going to do it for this episode, and thank you guys so much for watching, because it should be the end of the week. So thank you guys so much for watching, and if you guys have anything else you want to see me react to, feel free to put in the comments down below. One guy did give me something, but I couldn't find it, so sorry I didn't get to that one, and I probably won't be able to get to that one because the comment didn't really make a lot of sense. So be specific about what you want me to look at. Give me a channel name and a video, and I'll try and look it up. And even if it's not a game, maybe if it's or not a game, but not a video, but a game you guys want to check out, let me know what the game is, what deal it's on, PlayStation, Xbox, PC, Itch, Game Jolt, whatever. Just let me know in the comments down below, and I could be able to find them a lot easier than having to do a bunch of research. So that being said, though, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed these reaction videos, and I'll get back to regular videos soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Hey, and peace. Wata.